Welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn. Finance has officially gone viral. And with that comes a new question. Are we finally democratizing financial knowledge or just turning it into entertainment? Today we're unpacking the Finfluencer effect and whether it's literacy or theater.
When financial advice becomes content, incentives change. The question isn't whether people are learning. It's what they're learning and at what cost.
I've seen many cycles where storytelling outruns fundamentals. Social media didn't invent that. It just compressed the timeline from years to seconds. That speed matters.
Let's see where trust actually sits today, credentials or relatability. So let's define terms. A finfluencer isn't a banker, advisor, or fiduciary. They're creators, often very talented ones, operating outside traditional financial rails. They might explain markets, promote products, share trades, or tell personal success stories, and millions listen.
And critically, most aren't regulated like financial institutions. No capital requirements, no suitability checks, no ongoing supervision, yet they influence real financial decisions. This isn't a criticism, it's a structural reality.
As an investor, that's fascinating and dangerous. You've effectively created a new intermediary, one with distribution power, but no balance sheet and no accountability.
Which leads to the strongest defense of finfluencers. To be fair, this is the strongest argument for finfluencers. They reach people traditional finance never did. Younger audiences, first-time investors, people who never walked into a bank branch or called an advisor.
Absolutely. Many consumers wouldn't engage with finance otherwise. Budgeting, credit awareness, basic investing, those are real wins. The industry ignored those audiences for a long time.
I agree. Lowering the barrier to entry is good, but access without depth is like teaching someone to drive using only the accelerator. You move quickly until you hit something.
And that brings us to where the model starts to strain. Here's where things get uncomfortable. Education takes time. Algorithms reward speed, emotion, and certainty.
Oversimplification is the real risk. Complex financial trade-offs get flattened into do this, not that. Compliance exists precisely because reality is messy.
Every bubble I've lived through had the same soundtrack. This time it's different. Finfluencers just added better lighting.
And when theater replaces education, failure doesn't stay theoretical. When finfluencer advice fails, it doesn't fail quietly.
We see real harm, retail investors chasing volatility, entering products they don't understand, with no recourse when things go wrong. There's no suitability review, no duty of care.
And capital loss hits the least sophisticated first. That's not democratization, that's redistribution in reverse.
So naturally, regulators are paying attention. Regulators are clearly watching, but they're behind.
The system wasn't designed for borderless advice delivered in 30-second clips. Disclosure rules weren't written for memes.
And platforms profit either way. Engagement is monetized immediately, while consequences are externalized.
So how should investors interpret all of this? So from an investor's perspective, should we care about finfluencers?
As sentiment indicators, yes. As fundamentals, absolutely not. Attention creates volatility, not value.
Long-term value still comes from infrastructure, compliance, resilience, things that never trend on TikTok.
This is exactly how capital decides where not to go.
Which creates a sharp contrast. Here's the irony. People say banks are boring, but boring protects you.
Exactly. Compliance is invisible when it works. You only notice it when it's gone.
Trust used to be earned slowly. Now it's borrowed instantly and often unpaid back.
So is there a middle ground? If we zoom out for a moment, enforcement is no longer hypothetical.
We're already seeing regulators respond. SEC actions around undisclosed promotions, FCA warnings on Finfluencer activity, and growing scrutiny of platforms themselves. Enforcement is uneven today, but directionally clear. The risk isn't just fines, it's reputational damage and forced operational change.
Markets price uncertainty poorly. When enforcement is inconsistent, capital demands a higher risk premium.
Regulatory risk is rising, even if it hasn't fully landed yet. So, is there a responsible version of this?
Yes, transparent incentives, no performance guarantees, real disclosures, and alignment with regulated rails. This is where education supports outcomes instead of distorting them.
Education should reduce risk, not disguise it. If someone is selling certainty, they're selling fiction.
Which brings us to the core takeaway. So here's the real takeaway. Finfluencers aren't the problem.
Misaligned incentives are. Systems reward engagement, not outcomes.
And markets always punish theater eventually. The only question is who pays the tuition.
This is where hype directly affects capital behavior. We want to ground this in what investors are already seeing in the market, because this isn't theoretical. These dynamics show up in enforcement actions, in volatility patterns, and in where disciplined capital is quietly moving.
Social-driven markets compress diligence cycles, prices spike without fundamentals, retail losses cluster at peaks, and sentiment alpha decays quickly. For investors, this creates volatility, but also mispricing. The key is knowing which signals matter and which don't.
Noise doesn't eliminate risk. It redistributes it, often downward.
Noise creates opportunity, but only for disciplined capital. Let's look at what that actually means in practice. So where does capital go when the theater fades?
Smart capital flows to what scales quietly: compliance, identity, and platform-level risk controls. These don't trend, but they compound.
Every high-growth financial platform eventually needs these layers. The difference is whether they build them early or pay for them later. And this is exactly why infrastructure, identity, and compliance layers, like the ones we focus on at Lock Trust, end up doing the quiet work that makes scale possible.
Boring, scales, theater, fades.
Thank you for joining us. Let's open it up, because this debate is just getting started. Let's start simple. Net. Are finfluencers good or bad for finance?
They're neither. They're a distribution layer. Whether they educate or mislead depends entirely on incentives and guardrails.
Every financial cycle creates new messengers. Markets don't fail because of messengers. They fail because people confuse storytelling with truth.
So influence isn't the issue. Accountability is. Finfluencers influence real financial behavior, but don't carry the obligations of advisors. Should that change?
Licensing isn't about stifling speech. It's about protecting consumers. If you're meaningfully influencing financial decisions, there should be baseline accountability.
Full licensing may be impractical, but tiered responsibility makes sense. Education is different from explicit recommendations. Right now, everything is blurred.
Platforms use AI to optimize engagement and moderate content. Can they use it to prevent harm?
Yes, technically. AI can flag patterns, misleading claims, undisclosed promotions, repeated hype cycles. The limitation isn't capability, it's incentives.
Platforms only change when risk hits earnings or reputation. That's how regulation always works.
Creators come and go, platforms endure. Who's the real gatekeeper?
History suggests platforms will be next. When distribution creates systemic risk, regulation follows the infrastructure, not the individual.
This mirrors payments and banking. Regulators always end up at the rails.
Whether we like it or not, this is how many people enter finance now. Is that a problem?
Yes, but a front door without guardrails leads to unsafe buildings. The opportunity is connecting education to compliant infrastructure.
Distribution has changed. Value creation hasn't. The winners convert attention into trusted systems, not speculation.
Jean-Marc, how do investors treat this information responsibly?
As a sentiment indicator only, if you mistake attention for fundamentals, you overpay. Volatility is tradable. Hype is not durable.
And infrastructure doesn't show up in trends, but it determines who survives the volatility.
For fintech builders listening, what's the lesson?
Design for durability early. Compliance, identity, and controls are cheaper before scale than after crisis.
Capital rewards discipline eventually. The only variable is timing.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.